Sovereign Harmony. Thanks for joining me here. It is Sunday, December 7th. We're going to go over the astrology for the week through about December 13th. And it's a pretty transitionary week. We are still following up from this full moon in Gemini that we just had a few days ago. In fact, I'm looking at the moon up there. There's still a lot of moon left here this morning. It's right next to Jupiter, actually. And so we're finishing up some of the energy associated with that, associated with the Mercury retrograde that we've come out of here on November 29th, because Mercury's still in its shadow, so it's going to finish up the energies that started in late October. Okay, and then we're also going to have a preview for next week's new moon in Sagittarius. That's going to square the pending Saturn-Neptune conjunction that is they're both in late Pisces now. They will join each other at 0 degrees Aries in February. So a big transitionary period that we're in this week. So to start, I'll start with what's happening this weekend. So again, coming off that full moon, we're still with it. We're still getting these gusts of ideas, gusts of information, things that are blowing through because we've done so much clearing with this Mercury retrograde that dipped back into Scorpio. Okay, and again, that full moon squared the nodes of the moon in Pisces, Virgo. So it's awakening us to this idea of choosing our soul path over our egoic experiences and habits. So this choice for growth, it's inspiring that. But, Mars already did that square. This full moon squared now. And this week we'll have Venus there. And then Mercury finally around the winter solstice will square those nodes as well. On top of that, the ruler of the Gemini full moon is Mercury. Mercury, again, finishing up its shadow from its retrograde. And so it is in the late degrees of Scorpio. It is currently finishing up the water grand trine I've been talking about the last few weeks. And that involves Jupiter in Cancer, Saturn in Pisces, and then we've got Mercury in Scorpio. So what's interesting is this morning we actually have the moon joining Jupiter in Cancer. So we have a fourth member of that water grand trine as it finishes. And actually the Jupiter-Saturn trine itself is splitting up in terms of the 1 degree orb. It's starting to pull apart here. So that's on its way over. It'll be back actually, but in different signs here late 2026 through early 2027. We won't get into that right now. But point is, it's breaking up for now in those water signs. And so Mercury's finishing up with that. So we've gone through that wash cycle, okay? That flow. We're cleansed. We've opened up space. And that's why this wind is blowing in with that Gemini full moon. That's, again, still with us. We'll still have many gusts of those winds coming at us. So it's also presenting us with facts and ideas and things to contemplate and consider, okay? And then what Mercury's going to do is finish up its aspects to the outer planets. So it's opposing Uranus in Taurus, trining Neptune in Pisces, and sextiling Pluto in Aquarius, just like the other planets have done recently, okay? And that has to do with crossing from Scorpio into Sagittarius. All these planets are on the edges of the signs, so it's making aspects to them all. So it's just speaking to this idea of transitioning from the old to the new that is coming up in 2026. Again, it's going to be a 1 year. Numerologically, it's going to be the year of the horse, Chinese astrology-wise. Everything indicates moving forward along with the astrology with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries. So we're splitting off from the past and heading toward the future. In addition, later this week, again, Venus, like I mentioned, will square the nodes just like this full moon did. And so it's just reiteration of, again, choosing our soul path over our egoic experiences. We're meant to grow now, okay? And in addition, midweek, we'll have Neptune turning direct in Pisces. So we had Saturn turn direct in Pisces at about 25 degrees. That was back on November 27th. And now we have Neptune at the 29th degree of Pisces turning direct, okay? So now both Saturn and Neptune in Pisces will be direct in those late signs. Think of it as like Neptune leading the way at the 29th degree. It's that critical degree. And Saturn is kind of checking on it from behind. And it's going to catch up to Neptune and grab it there when it enters Aries, okay? And so collectively, expect the propaganda knob to go up to about 11 starting this week, probably lasting for the next couple of months because Neptune won't enter Aries until January 26th, I believe. So we got a good month and a half or so of Neptune at the 29th degree of Pisces moving in forward direction. So efforts to propagandize are going to be high, okay? Just keep that in mind. But with Saturn right there behind it, it's keeping it in check. I'm calling Saturn the deception correction planet as of late. And that's exactly what it's going to do. So any attempts at deception are going to be immediately corrected by facts. And that's a big part of this full moon in Gemini. It's blowing in waves and gusts of facts, things that force us to reconsider our beliefs, which is the realm of Sagittarius. Okay. And as Mercury enters Sagittarius this week, before it forms that sextile to Pluto, so it's crossing again from Scorpio into Sagittarius, just like the other planets have done recently. Now all the personal planets will be in Sagittarius. So this our vision is expanded. Also, this awareness of our beliefs is on the front burner, and these gusts of facts and whatnot can blow in and make us question our beliefs. And we're actually wide open right now with all this mutable energy to adjust our beliefs. And it is possible. I know it seems impossible, but you can change your mind on something. And what this opportunity is right before we transition from the old to the new space, where we're going to operate more from our soul space instead of our ego space, is we've got to face some facts, and we've got to adjust our beliefs according to those facts, according to that change in our belief system. And a big part of that, which we'll get into later, different talks and whatnot, is that the separation of power from those at the top and those of the people is fizzling. That's a big part of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries. And what's happening with the people is that we're kind of waking up and realizing that we have more in common with each other than we do with anybody at the top that supposedly represents us, okay? And so that's a big part of what this change in belief, this, blowing winds of facts and change is, we're made to believe that we're extremely against each other, when in reality we have a lot of commonalities. And there might be some small things that we disagree with, but it's the media that really promotes that. So think of the media as really upping that game this week and for the next several weeks, okay? On a personal level, what's interesting, so as Neptune turns direct here midweek, we actually, right now, and for the first few days of this week, Mars in Sagittarius will square Saturn in Pisces, and then right after Neptune turns direct, Mars is gonna get up to Neptune's level and square Neptune in Pisces from Sagittarius. So it's gonna square Saturn and then Neptune. So Saturn's right on the heels of Neptune. So Mars is gonna awaken that. And that's gonna be the first planet that awakens it. It's a preview of next week's new moon in Sagittarius, because that new moon will square both Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, okay, from Sagittarius. And then we'll have Venus do the same thing. And then we'll have Mercury do the same thing, okay? So the personal planets are running through this transect of, talking to Neptune essentially is just waking up, moving direct again. It's the final degree. And so Mars is starting the party here. And so on a personal level, we might feel a little frustration early in the week. And what that frustration is doing is awakening us to the idea that we are responsible for the perceived barriers. So there's a sense of Mars and Sag, we want to move, we want to go. And we're coming up against a roadblock, and that roadblock is Saturn and Pisces. And so what this is saying is, hey, who's responsible for why you're frustrated? And at the end of the day, it's us. We're the ones that either took on or continue to take on stories about our limits, our egoic stories, right? And so what this is saying is, hey, you're responsible to change that. We're at the end of the road here. What are you going to do as we get into this new energy? Are you going to stick with those old barriers that hold you back? And so it's an awareness of that. It's easy to project that, and we'll see that. But the best thing to do is take responsibility. Understand that. As Mars gets to Neptune at the end of the week, the best use of that is visualization. Is just maximize the visualization. Sagittarius is already, we got all the planets there, all the personal planets. So we're already in a visual mode. Trying to take action can be self-sabotaging under that energy, because it's not quite ready yet. And again, what that's saying is I want to go. Mars and Sag, I want to go. Neptune and Pisces is saying, yeah, but there's some stuff we got to finish first. Okay, we can't just go with what we have here. We did a deep cleaning with Mercury diving into Scorpio. We've got that gust of wind blowing in with that full moon in Gemini. So we are in a space to change and adjust things. So we are ready to go. But we've got to experience that frustration and that kind of inability to really to focus our direction, because that's an awareness that we're not quite clicked in yet. Not quite clicked in, but we will be. And this new moon next week in Sagittarius will be part of that process. So we'll leave it at that. Any questions, please let me know. If you want to look at your chart, where all this stuff falls, we can do that as well. You can follow me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you're watching this. You can find me in other places, Sovereign Harmony Astrology. And other than that, we'll see you next week. Have a good week. Enjoy your Sunday and take care.